Hello, happy Monday, everyone. We're here with my coach, Gabi. Gabi, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'm so glad to be here.
Today, we are talking about my very favorite topic, as you well know, as evidenced by my P&L that you get to look at every month, Profit Matters, Chapter 15.
It is my favorite chapter. What can I say?
Well, and right before we got on the call, you mentioned something about the reaction you get from some of your clients every month when you want to talk about the P&L and those numbers and the budget and the expenses. Why do you think that is?
I think partially it's because we haven't embraced a lifestyle of leaning into what money can do for the good it can do. And part of it is that sometimes we just don't like our own realities of where we are in our money journey. And by just not looking at it, our brain tells us that, another month can go by without holding our money accountable yet. And I love the way, Mo talks about it, particularly in the chapter too, that, when we really commit to that lifestyle that we work so hard for, especially in this business, that it can do amazing things for our family and our community, right?
Yep. So one thing I loved, and you and I were texting a little bit earlier, one thing I really love is Mo talks about the mindset that she had around money growing up. In one of the earlier chapters, she talked about she never ever wanted to be poor because there were times where she wanted to give a gift to somebody, maybe buy them a gift for a birthday party, and they didn't have any money. And so she decided that she was never ever going to be poor. And of course, now that she's wealthy, she doesn't have to worry about that. But she talks about in this chapter specifically how her dad taught her to respect the wealthy. What do you think about that?
I think that it all, as usual, starts with your mindset. And it sounds like her parents did a phenomenal job putting her into an environment at an early age to foster a mindset that would help her to see what money can do. And it makes me wonder, how often were we as children raised, depending on socioeconomic backgrounds or even different cultures that look potentially at money in different ways, that we have that same advantage? Or do we wake up one day as adults? And certainly, I fall into that category because I was not raised with financial skill or ability. My family didn't have much money, and that little money that we had was saved for rainy days that never came and yet never touched, that help us to also not get into the mindset of giving. So unless we as young adults or adults seek out that environment and surrounding ourselves with people who either teach us or mentor us, or build it ourselves, where do we get that education?
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking a lot about this. As you know, I'm on a health journey, and I was thinking about, okay, what beliefs do I have around that I got when I was little? And one thing that stuck out to me was finish your plate, clean your plate every single time. Don't waste food. And so even now, like, portion control is one of my biggest issues. And so then I was thinking, okay, so what beliefs do I have around money that may not be serving me? And I remember my dad growing up, we were a military family, and he was promoted very quickly. So, and he always worked multiple jobs. So we had enough, and we would have had a lot, but he always wanted the very latest car, the very latest, every 2 years, go trade it in, get something new, something fancier. And so I got to watch that. But then also, this one is really interesting. We grew up, and Mo talks about this a little bit in her chapter. We grew up with a very, very conservative church background that inadvertently taught the money is the root of all evil nugget. Mm-hmm. So I have that. And, when she talks about how wealthy people, being wealthy is to be respected because those are the people that can give, I really had to look inside and think, I have some limiting beliefs, I think, even still around that.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, it's interesting that you mentioned your parents too. So the way it showed up in my household, I was raised Catholic, and or Christian. I went to a Catholic elementary school and high school. And one thing that, because we didn't have much money, we were doing is we traded money for time. So I grew up, as you know, trained musician. So we spent a lot of time giving back to our community through the resources that we could afford, which was, you know, a gift. And I think sometimes what happens too when we think about outcomes, like wanting to be able to spend, we think about this huge amount of either time or huge amount of money, whatever that currency is, we're thinking about giving. Yet we forget, because we never ask the people that, you know how to give $1 million in our company, or how to give copious amounts of time towards organizations where they started. Right? We're so in love with outcomes. We're not in love with the leading measures to just make an acknowledgement. I love that Mo, reminded us that it can be just either the building of a lifestyle of 10% of tithing, right? And to really understand how much money you still have to net for your family first and foremost, to make tithing part of your lifestyle, and how much, how your activities or how your mindset around that would have to change when you have the fortune of making money, to save just a little bit, just start.
Yes, I love that. And when you really start thinking about what she said, if everybody would give 10%, we wouldn't need all of these different charities and all of that, or we wouldn't need welfare, because we would have the charities, the churches, the nonprofits that would do all these things in our community.
That's right. And I think she's absolutely correct, because it's interesting. I was reading another book simultaneously to this one that also talked about how to save taxes is not just reserved for the wealthy. You just have to understand yourself, and you also have to understand a system into which you're willing and committed to plugging in to make that work. The tithing idea, it's really just a system, right? So I love that she reminds us of that. And I also would love to challenge our audience today, that if you are committed to helping your community, that you're probably listening to this today because you already know that you're going to need some money for it. And in order to get started, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. We just want to first become consistent with the activities that lead us to save the money so that we can give something back. One of my favorite things that I used to do as a teacher, or that I started as a teacher, was that once a year I looked around my community, and with the little money that I was saving at the time, I made a decision to help one of my fellow colleagues in a different district to buy an instrument or to buy a resource. And so, for some years I was able to buy one book, and it was $30 that I had saved. And now I'm to the point where I can actually help somebody buy a xylophone or repair a tuba, so that it just became something over time, right? And it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be something that has to be in meaningful alignment with the mission that you set forth on this planet before you leave the planet.
That's amazing. And of course, as you say all of this, I'm reminded it's always about the basics, and it's always about the delayed gratification, and knowing that I intend to be very generous, and yet I keep living in that. And sometimes it's difficult for me to do the little things like, Missy, what's your budget this month? Missy, how much did you save? Missy, and the very basic thing, Ben Kenny talked about this, he just did his wealth series, and wealth is as simple as spending less than you earn.
That's it.
And we just complicate it so much. So one other thing I want to talk to you about, and I'm very mindful that you know about my business more than anyone, so I'm going to be brave and go on.
How much are we putting this on the table today during this time?
So my very favorite thing here is, a great business has a purpose to serve and to deliver something valuable to its clients and customers, but profit is the measure of the business's health and its ability to last. Yeah. So as a MAPS coach, I know that you really have your finger on the pulse of what a lot of business owners are thinking and what their activities are. What do you think are some of the beliefs around this that make profit so challenging for some?
Great question, MAPS partner. I think part of the idea is that we got into this business without really understanding what our profit needs to look like to fund our perfect life. So we got into this mindset, or we got into the lack of habit of taking profit for our families first. And once big checks start coming in, we just forget that the ability to save for profit and for taxes and for business expenses is a business discipline and skill that one must possess in order to be able to scale up a business. I think it's also the difference between, you may have heard this before, people who end up making the decision to be agents that are in lifestyle mode. In other words, they actually find that if I just kept it small and kept the majority of my money, I can live a decent life and I can keep, 55%, 50% of my profitability and I'm good. Versus the business owners who show up every week to be like you, Missy, to wanting to duplicate and scale for long-term systematic growth so that you can achieve more in the long term, where the distinction lies. So number one is I see that people are really unclear in regards to their mission, right? Being a lifestyle agent versus being a growth agent. And number two, that they don't seek out the skill and the training needed early on in their business career, not just through a coach, but rather through financial training and additional business training. And we have so many programs out there now. You mentioned Ben Kinney, of course, he's a great resource through his training company, and also through MAPS and the programs that we have out. We have a profit camp. You and I, we were doing a book club last year on another book on profit that everybody was reading at KW. Yes. And yet the question becomes, what is your systematic approach on a weekly basis to build the habit to become the person that cares about profit? Yeah. Maybe you're not at that profitability, that 40% profitability we talk about for team owners, yet are you at 10%? What would it look like for you to move from 10 to 15%? Who holds you accountable to that? How are you holding yourself accountable to that? Right? Accountability is not something that's done onto anybody. You make the decision or you don't.
Yep. Well, and I think it's interesting because one of the very first conversations we had in our coaching relationship, I didn't know anything about being a business owner, and I'm still learning. I'm nowhere near mastery. And yet one of the first questions you asked me is, Missy, are you a real estate agent or are you a business owner?
Oh, did I say that?
I mean, yes. And it was a great question because I had never thought about profit. I had just hired a company to do my P&L for me, and I had no idea what any of the numbers meant. I didn't know, I read the Red Book, and I just read it to say I could read it because that's what you're supposed to do in Keller Williams. I didn't read it to actually follow it or understand it. It was my badge of, and so I didn't know what any of the numbers meant. And it was interesting because I think, especially some of the people that have been coming each week, I know they're also in a similar stage of transitioning from real estate agent to, oh, wow, look at the good that I can do if I keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what advice would you give them, or questions would you ask them around making that transition?
Yeah, so as you know, Missy, because everybody in my roster gets to hear this, I'm a huge fan of micro changes, right? So if your decision today is, okay, I'm listening to this and I really just know very little about profits or about how to save more money, then I would recommend that you look around and you build your own environment. And environment can mean a person of one that is on a regular schedule with you to check in on your finances, right? If you don't have a net worth sheet at this point, or you don't really know how to look at your P&L because you're treating it just like an actuality of reconciliations of your bank accounts, you may have to talk to your MAPS coach about that. And in all honesty, lay the cards out on the table, because the best thing that you can tell a mentor or your tribe is, I don't even know where to start. Like, here is me, a clean slate. So number one, I would recommend build your environment. Find mentors that know more about the thing that you require or acquire proficiency around, and then set a regular schedule to just learn more. You have to be the one to make that decision, right? Step 3 is going to be that as you gain clarity, the next logical step for you may become to actually identify what your cash flow is, or how much of the money, let's just take profit off the table right now, how much money you're spending against the budget or lifestyle that you're currently living, and if that's something that is helping you to build reserves or profit or not, right? So, and again, I mean, these are all really chunked down simple steps to take, so that ultimately the outcome will become that you also make the decision to save part of your money to either put it into your rainy day savings if you don't have that 3 to 6 months that I challenge my clients to build every year, so that if something happens, like, oh yeah, an unforeseen pandemic, that you guys are going to be okay. But also number two, that you then make a decision based on point A, right? Realizing where you are right now, what can be done to start saving an amount of money. It may just be $1 one month because you may be running against your lifestyle, which will require a systematic, slow change over time, not within 24 hours and not between one coaching call to the next, for you to make a decision on what you might be able to live less on or with, and then to move that one step closer to point B of ultimately wanting to save some money, right?
That's incredible.
Chunking it down. In fact, with the one book that I think really helped provide a lot of clarity for myself last year was Atomic Habits. Right? As you know, I just ran a half marathon last weekend, and you do that by putting on your tennis shoes, and then walk one step at a time, especially when you're not an enthusiastic runner. And it's just no different with money.
And that's that's amazing, because what I'm learning as I continue to mastery in health and finances and business is it's all the same kind of discipline and micro changes. It's just Absolutely. A different set of numbers. It's your calories and your dollars and your leads and your contacts. It's all the same kind of metrics. It's just a different focus.
And I love that you bring up those metrics. And in fact, it's just a different conversion, because the first step of money awareness is just to know where your money is going, and if you like the way that trajectory is going or not. How clear are you on the money that's being truly saved up for reserves versus saved for bills to pay at a later time or different kinds of outputs? And I'll be completely honest with you, Missy, when I started this business, I was just like any other individual agent. I was really enjoying how much money was coming in. And it took me years to really understand that much of the money that I thought I had saved in my bank account was already earmarked for experiences, a nicer car, maybe a bigger house, right? All these things that are those shiny objects of why you got into the business. Yet I had to really understand how much of my money wasn't going into future retirement reserves, right? Buying that first investment property or being able to save up for something so that money could yield a greater return than the job that I had, which was being an agent.
Yes.
We all struggle with the same stuff.
We do. We had a little barbecue last summer, a little church barbecue, and there's a guy here, a local builder. His name is Gene McCown, and he is a phenomenal guy. And so we talked a little bit about wealth and money, and because we have a relationship, he knows that he can speak openly about money with me. And I think that's one struggle a lot of us have is who can we just talk about money with, because I can't do that with my friends here. Anyway, so we were just having a very candid conversation about money, and he shared that he makes money so fast that at this point in his life that he can't give it away quickly enough. And so last year he gave away 25 million in scholarships, but the way that he had set up all of his funding, he earned more on it, on the money, on that 25 million than he could give it away. And I mean, my mind was just blown at the things he was saying about that. And then he said, so tell me about your finances. And I'm like, well, I did like 200,000 in last year in GCI and blah, blah, blah. And he said, let me guess, you traded in your car, you got a new house, and you're wondering where all your money went. And my jaw hit the ground. Yes, sir. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing, I mean, just to fill your bucket on the other hand as well, since you have made the decision to start looking at your finances regularly, a lot has started to shift. And sometimes those shifts, especially in the beginning, are not going to necessarily show up externally, yet your accountability to your money has already yielded an impact on your business.
It has. And it's interesting doing the wealth series again with Ben and looking at my net worth. When I started last April, it was the first time I went to Win, Make, Give, and I calculated my net worth. It was negative 18,000, and it's 102,000 now.
Yeah.
So
that's that better. Focus and accountability piece to oneself. Yeah. Yep. And I think it's such a great habit that a family can build to also have those money conversations together. Because I don't know about you, yet in my family, that was not a thing. We did not talk about how to grow money, how to safely invest money. I just knew not to spend it. That was, my father was born in World War II. That was the mentality I grew up with. And it was really a struggle that I had post-college because I just wanted to keep my money and not really learn how to have a return of multiples on those dollars earned.
Well, one thing, so that makes me think of something else. I love talking to you and seeing your face. It's so great not on the phone. I was taking Drew Lee's course also last year. I take all the courses.
And Drew is such a wonderful trainer around money too, because it became such a big part of his life.
He is. So his course for folks that are interested is Master the Path to Money. It's phenomenal. And he takes you through, it's kind of a combination of MAPS coaching and MREA work and Dave Ramsey and his financial piece. So it's sort of this kind of hybrid, perfect for real estate agents, particularly those following the Red Book. But he made a post one time and I started thinking about this because, we all teach other people by our example. And so Drew posted, he wondered what his kids were going to learn around money. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking the other day, I was reminded of that because Hank, my 7-year-old, I was wondering about his financial thermostat. I had a big problem with that in the beginning. And for those that don't remember, your financial thermostat is if you think that 85,000 is all you need to make in a year to do this, then you're never going to make more than 85,000. So you have to continually plan ahead and keep raising that. So I was wondering, I struggled with mine. So I'm sitting on the couch with Hank and he was like, Mom, are we going to go to Disney World again this year? And I said, well, it might be closed. I'm not sure. And then he said, well, I kind of don't want to do that anyway. I think we should go to the Australian Zoo. I'm not even sure why. And yet I'm thinking, okay, so the thing that I'm going to struggle with teaching my kids is here's how you do a budget and, the piggy banks and saving and setting up an account. Like we haven't done any of that with our kids yet. They're 9 and 7. Mm-hmm. So what am I teaching them? That you can just buy whatever you want? I definitely teach them that money's good for the good it can do, but they also see us not talking about our budget as a family or saying things like, well, you know what, we've already eaten out this week and we only have it budgeted one time. So those are.
And I think, and I would challenge you as a family just to gamify, right, what budgeting can look like and to start having those conversations. And I think with summer approaching too, I've had, friends with children that have put up lemonade stands and have had the kids, earn part of the sales and how the parents will match that so that they can put it in a savings account or to, what is the game that Drew also mentioned that you can download with your children?
Oh, the cat from Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes. Yeah. For your children.
Something.
Yes. Yeah. The cash flow game. That's right. And that there are any more. I mean, so many apps out there that can help kids to become financially more knowledgeable. There's, I think it was Betterment that Drew mentioned, because I too have taken the course, and I have to apologize, Drew, if you're listening, because I zoned out on all things kids since we don't have any. We just have a fur baby that he also mentioned that there are programs out there where your kids can buy into the stock market and just help them to get exposed to that earlier, right?
That's incredible. I'll tell you one thing, just for those of you listening, you don't even have to really know what you're doing yet. I hope this doesn't make you cringe. I use Acorns because Drew suggested it.
Oh yeah, me too. I have it.
Yeah. So it was painful to watch like a month ago. I was, and now I only put in roundups and then $10 a week. And now I have almost 2,000 in there, just from April of last year to this year.
Yeah.
And it builds and it's really fun to watch.
Well, I'm also a big fan. I mean, I love how that's gamified. It's exactly the same reason that my husband and I use Acorns, because of it, the Drew introduced it to all of us coaches. And somebody is calling me. He introduced us to it, and it's been so much fun to see, just even though I want to say I'm fairly proficient around budgeting and finances, how much more money can be found without us missing it, right? That's like the whole, the fun around Acorns. And so like you, we just have found all of this money that has helped us to continue to grow net worth in a very simple way. So again, it doesn't have to be hard.
Well, Coach, thank you for talking to me. We've got a couple more minutes. What other thoughts do you have that you would like to share?
Are you asking the audience or are you asking me?
You.
Okay.
Although I probably should check in on Facebook and see if there's any comments or questions.
Yeah. I think maybe
Normally
my last
Heather is with us doing that.
but she's doing important things for her net worth today, as I understand it. Yeah, I think just the last thought is if you want to become somebody who is a profitable individual, that you subscribe to a system, right, a regular ongoing basis to understand your money. So start with one person or start with your coach and let the mentor, the coach in your world know that that's an interest of yours and what the rhythm of regularity is around which you'd like to be held accountable. So set up your system and then stick to your system, because it really sucks when you enlist a coach or a mentor and then you don't hold yourself accountable. Nobody can make you.
Yeah. So last question. If someone watching is interested in getting a MAPS coach and getting some of that accountability, how should they contact MAPS Coaching?
Absolutely. Well, all of your friends and your KW associates are my friends and associates too, so they can always reach out to me. I can be found at mapscoachgabi@gmail.com, or of course I'm on Facebook, and I will gladly respond to any private messages. Otherwise, your Market Center leadership can of course always help you as well. Yeah, pretty simple.
Gabi is always happy to make you cry. That's not really true.
It's a good kind of cry though, right? It barely hurts.
It is. It is. One of my favorite things you ever said to me, and I keep it in mind every time I cry about anything, is that tears are just a representation of what you can't be with anymore. Particularly those spending habits we don't need to be with. So, all right, Coach. Well, thank you. And guys, thanks for watching and have a great day. We'll see you Wednesday. We have Grace Schiffman coming with Love Your Country.
Thanks for having me, Missy. It was a great talk.
Bye.
Bye.